Hey everyone, I'm Sophia, and today we're going to talk about a very special topic, something that might seem simple but can be quite tricky: how to say sorry the right way. And I'm here with my co-host, Mason.
Hey everyone, I'm Mason. Saying sorry is something we all have to do at some point, but it's not always as easy as it sounds, right? We've all been there, struggling to find the right words to apologize, especially when emotions are involved.
Exactly. It's easy to just say, "I'm sorry," but sometimes that's not enough. Depending on the situation, an apology can feel empty or insincere if it's not done properly. Today, we'll explore how to make your apologies meaningful and effective.
Yes, and I think it's important to start by recognizing that there are different types of apologies. Not every situation calls for the same kind of sorry. For example, there's the quick apology for a small mistake, like bumping into someone on the street. Then, there's the deeper apology, like when you've hurt someone's feelings or made a bigger mistake.
Right, and that's where a lot of people get stuck. They might use the same "I'm sorry" for both small and serious situations, but the context really matters. You can't just say the same thing and expect the person to feel that you truly understand the impact of what you did.
Absolutely. I think one of the most important things about apologizing is acknowledging the other person's feelings. It's not just about saying you're sorry, but showing that you recognize how your actions affected them.
Yes, it's all about empathy. When someone feels hurt, they want to know that you understand why they're upset. That's why a genuine apology usually includes some form of, "I see how my actions hurt you," or "I understand how you feel."
And that's a big part of what makes an apology feel sincere. It shows that you're not just saying sorry to get it over with, you're actually taking the time to consider the other person's perspective.
Exactly. Let's take a common example. If you're late to an important meeting or appointment, a simple "I'm sorry I'm late" might not be enough, especially if it affected the other person's schedule. Instead, you could say something like, "I'm really sorry for being late. I understand that it disrupted your day, and I appreciate your patience." That small addition makes a huge difference because it acknowledges the inconvenience you caused.
Yes, that's a perfect example. It shows that you're not just apologizing for the act of being late, but also recognizing how it affected the other person. And I think that's the key to a good apology. It's not just about what you did, but about how it impacted the other person.
Exactly. And another thing that's often missed in apologies is taking responsibility. You have to own up to your actions. Instead of saying something like, "I'm sorry if you were offended," which kind of shifts the blame to the other person, it's better to say, "I'm sorry I said something offensive. Do you see the difference?"
Yes, that's a great point. The first version makes it sound like it's the other person's fault for being offended, which can actually make things worse. The second version, where you take responsibility, is much more effective because it shows you understand that your words or actions were the problem.
Exactly. Taking responsibility shows maturity and self-awareness. It lets the other person know that you're not making excuses, you're accepting that you were wrong and that you're willing to make it right.
And I think that's where a lot of apologies go wrong. Sometimes people are afraid to fully admit their mistake, so they use these vague, half apologies, like "I'm sorry if you feel that way," or "I didn't mean to upset you." But those kinds of statements can feel dismissive, like you're not really acknowledging what happened.
Yes, and that's why it's so important to be clear and direct when you apologize. If you made a mistake, say it plainly. "I'm sorry I was wrong," or "I shouldn't have said that." The more direct you are, the more genuine your apology will feel.
Exactly. And another key part of apologizing is making amends. Sometimes words aren't enough, especially if the mistake caused significant harm. In those cases, it's important to ask, "What can I do to make things right?" or "How can I fix this?"
That's a great point. Asking how you can make things right shows that you're not just sorry, you're willing to take action to repair the situation. And it gives the other person a chance to express what they need from you, which can help rebuild trust.
Yes, because at the end of the day, an apology is about healing the relationship, not just clearing your conscience. If you want to truly mend things, you have to be willing to go beyond just saying sorry and take steps to make things better.
Exactly, and it's important to remember that apologizing is not about expecting instant forgiveness. Sometimes, even with a heartfelt apology, the other person might need time to process what happened. Apologizing is a way of showing that you're committed to making things right, but you have to give the other person space if they need it.
Yes, patience is key. Sometimes an apology is the first step, but it takes time for the other person to fully forgive. And that's okay. The important thing is that you've shown your sincerity and willingness to make things better.
Exactly, Mason. I love that you mentioned patience. Sometimes people expect that once they say sorry, everything will immediately go back to normal, but that's not always the case. The other person might need time to heal, especially if the hurt was deep. And as the person apologizing, you have to respect that.
Absolutely. It's important to understand that forgiveness is not something you can demand. You can't force someone to move on just because you've apologized. A sincere apology includes giving them the space and time they need to heal at their own pace.
Yes, and that's why it's also crucial to avoid pressuring the other person. You might feel anxious to fix the situation right away, but sometimes the best thing you can do is to step back after apologizing and let the other person come to terms with it.
That's so true. And while we're on the topic of what to avoid, I think it's important to mention that apologizing shouldn't come with excuses. Have you ever heard someone say something like, "I'm sorry, but I was having a bad day," or "I didn't mean it. I was just stressed out"?
Oh, definitely. I've heard that so many times. And while it's human to want to explain why something happened, adding excuses to your apology can actually make it feel less genuine. It's almost like you're justifying what you did, which takes away from the apology itself.
Exactly. It can make the other person feel like you're not really taking full responsibility. Instead of focusing on your reasons, it's better to just own the mistake. Later, once the situation has calmed down, you can have a deeper conversation about what led to the issue, but during the apology itself, it's best to avoid those but statements.
I agree. And it's funny how such a small word like "but" can completely change the tone of an apology. For example, "I'm sorry, but you were also at fault" is very different from "I'm sorry for my part in this." The first one feels like you're deflecting blame, while the second shows true accountability.
Yes, it's all about taking full ownership. And you know, another thing that often gets overlooked is the tone of voice. You could say the right words, but if your tone sounds sarcastic or insincere, the apology won't be taken seriously. The way you say sorry matters just as much as the words themselves.
That's such a great point. Your body language and facial expressions also play a huge role in how your apology is received. If you're crossing your arms, avoiding eye contact, or speaking in a flat tone, it's going to come across as insincere, no matter what you say.
Right. A genuine apology is about showing vulnerability. It's not just about admitting you're wrong, but also showing that you truly care about the other person's feelings. That's what makes the apology meaningful, when the other person can see and feel your sincerity.
Exactly. And another thing I think is important when it comes to apologizing is the timing. Sometimes people apologize too quickly, just to get it over with, without really reflecting on what they did. But if you rush into an apology before you fully understand why the other person is upset, it can come across as shallow.
Yes, it's all about being thoughtful. You don't want to wait too long, of course, but giving yourself a moment to really think about what went wrong can help make the apology more genuine. It's about finding the right balance, apologizing soon enough to show you care, but not so quickly that it seems you're just trying to get it out of the way.
Exactly. When you take the time to reflect, you can offer a more meaningful apology. It's not just about saying the words, it's about understanding the impact of your actions and showing that you're committed to making things right. and that's what really builds trust.
Yes, trust is such a huge part of this. A good apology can help rebuild trust after a mistake, but only if it's done sincerely. If your apology feels forced or rushed, it can actually damage the relationship further because it shows that you're not fully invested in making things better.
Absolutely, and let's not forget that apologizing is just the first step. After the apology, your actions are what really matter. If you say you're sorry but then continue to make the same mistakes, your words lose their meaning.
Exactly. Actions speak louder than words. If you apologize for being late but keep arriving late, or apologize for interrupting but keep interrupting, the apology starts to feel empty. True change comes when you make an effort to adjust your behavior.
Yes, consistency is key. When someone sees that you've made a real effort to change, that's when trust begins to rebuild. Apologizing is important, but following through with your actions is what makes the difference.
That's so true, and it also helps to check in with the other person after some time has passed. You could say something like, "I've been trying to work on being more mindful of your feelings. How are we doing?" It shows that you're still committed to improving the relationship, even after the initial apology.
That's a great idea. Mason, checking in after some time has passed shows that you really care about how the other person is feeling, even after the apology. It reinforces that you're serious about making changes and improving the relationship, and it also gives the other person space to express if there's anything still bothering them.
Exactly. It shows that you're still paying attention and willing to listen. Sometimes people need more than one conversation to heal, and being open to that can really strengthen the relationship. It's a sign of emotional maturity, recognizing that resolving conflicts can be a process, not just a one-time event.
That's a key point. Missing emotional maturity. Apologizing is often seen as something simple, but it's actually a sign of real emotional intelligence. It takes self-awareness to admit when you're wrong, empathy to understand how the other person feels, and humility to acknowledge that you've hurt someone, even if it wasn't intentional.
Absolutely, Sophia. And something that's often overlooked is how powerful an apology can be in repairing relationships, not just romantic ones, but friendships, work relationships, and even family ties. When done correctly, an apology can almost act as a reset, giving both sides a chance to rebuild trust and understanding.
I completely agree. And it's also important to mention that apologizing doesn't make you weak. In fact, it takes a lot of courage to admit when you've made a mistake. Some people might hesitate to apologize because they feel like it makes them vulnerable, but it's actually a sign of strength. It shows that you value the relationship more than your ego.
Exactly. There's a lot of strength in vulnerability. Apologizing shows that you're willing to open up and put the other person's feelings first. It can actually make the relationship stronger because it creates a deeper level of trust. The other person sees that you care enough to acknowledge your mistakes and work towards fixing them.
Yes, and I think this is especially important in long-term relationships, whether it's with a partner, a family member, or even a close friend. Over time, little misunderstandings or conflicts can build up, and if you don't apologize or address them, they can cause a lot of tension. Apologies help clear the air and keep the relationship healthy.
Definitely. And what's interesting is that sometimes, even when we're the ones hurt, we can take the first step and apologize for our role in the conflict. I've seen situations where both sides are waiting for the other to apologize, and it only takes one person to break that cycle. Once you offer a genuine apology, it often opens the door for the other person to reflect and apologize to.
Yes, that's such an important point. Sometimes both people feel hurt, and they're stuck waiting for the other to make the first move. It can be difficult, but if you take that step and say, "I'm sorry for my part in this," it can really help both sides come to an understanding. It's not about who's right or wrong, but about finding a way to move forward together.
Right, and it's also worth noting that not every situation requires a formal, serious apology. Sometimes, in close relationships, you might just say something like, "Oops, I messed up," with a smile, and that can be enough. It depends on the situation and the relationship, but being able to apologize in a lighthearted way can keep things from becoming too heavy.
Exactly. Sometimes a simple, "my bad," with a little humor can work wonders, especially if the issue wasn't a big deal. It's all about reading the situation and knowing when a lighter approach is appropriate. But of course, for more serious situations, it's important to be thoughtful and sincere.
Yes, sincerity is key. Even if you use humor, the sincerity behind the words is what really matters. The other person needs to feel that you genuinely care about their feelings. If your apology feels like a joke or like you're brushing it off, it can actually make things worse.
That's true. It's all about balance. Humor can be a great way to ease tension, but it has to be done in a way that still shows respect for the other person's feelings. You don't want them to think that you're not taking the situation seriously.
Exactly. And going back to what we said earlier, every apology should fit the context. Sometimes, a simple acknowledgement is all that's needed, while other times, a more thoughtful and in-depth conversation is necessary. The key is to be mindful of the other person's emotions and the situation at hand.
Yes, knowing your audience is crucial. In more professional settings, for example, the way you apologize might be different from how you'd apologize to a close friend or family member. In a workplace, you might say, "I apologize for the misunderstanding," rather than using casual language. But the principles remain the same: be sincere, take responsibility, and show that you care about making things right.
Absolutely. Workplace apologies can be tricky because you want to be professional, but still show that you genuinely regret any mistakes. It's important to balance professionalism with sincerity so the apology doesn't come across as just going through the motions.
Exactly. And when you apologize in a work setting, it can actually boost your reputation. People respect those who can admit their mistakes and take responsibility. It shows leadership and integrity. Avoiding an apology, on the other hand, can harm your relationships with colleagues.
Yes, it's a sign of maturity and professionalism. People notice when you step up and apologize, and it often leads to a stronger, more positive work environment. It creates a culture of accountability where everyone feels comfortable owning up to their mistakes, knowing that it's a normal part of working together.
Absolutely, Mason. And when you create that culture of accountability, it encourages openness and honesty among team members. It fosters an environment where everyone feels safe to express their thoughts and feelings without fear of being judged. That's essential for teamwork and collaboration.
Exactly, Sophia. And it's not just about making an apology. It's about what happens after. If you apologize but don't change your behavior, it can undermine the trust you're trying to build. People need to see that you're committed to making improvements and that you take their feelings seriously.
Right, that's why it's important to follow through on any promises made during an apology. If you say, "I'm sorry I didn't complete that task," "I'll make sure it gets done by tomorrow," you need to actually do it. Following through is how you rebuild trust.
Absolutely. If you don't follow through, it sends the message that your apology was insincere and that can cause more harm than good. It's crucial to show that you're not just saying sorry, but are also willing to put in the effort to make things right.
Yes, and sometimes it helps to ask the other person what they need from you after the apology. For instance, you could say, "What can I do to make this better?" This shows that you're not just focused on yourself, but also on how you can support them moving forward.
That's a great point, Sophia. It opens up a dialogue and gives the other person a chance to express their needs. Sometimes they may just want to be heard, while other times they might need something specific. Being open to that feedback can strengthen your relationship.
Exactly. And another important aspect is to not rush the forgiveness process. Even if you've apologized sincerely, the other person may need time to process their feelings. It's important to respect their timeline and give them space if they need it.
Yes, patience is key. Just because you're ready to move on doesn't mean they are. Allowing the other person to heal at their own pace shows respect for their feelings. It also demonstrates that you understand the impact of your actions.
And it can be helpful to check in later on. Once some time has passed, you can gently ask how they're feeling about the situation. This shows that you genuinely care about their emotions and are still thinking about how to make things right.
Absolutely, Sophia. Just remember to keep it light and casual if you're checking in after a serious apology. You want to avoid putting any pressure on them to respond immediately. It's more about showing you're there for them when they're ready.
Well said, Mason. Ultimately, the right way to say sorry is about more than just the words. It's about the intention behind those words and the actions that follow. A heartfelt apology can open doors to healing and deeper connections.
Exactly, and it's a skill that can be developed over time. The more you practice being sincere and reflective, the easier it becomes. So, to all our listeners, remember that it's never too late to say sorry and to mean it.
That's right. Apologies can transform relationships and lead to more meaningful connections. Thank you all for joining us in this discussion about the right way to say sorry. We hope you found it helpful.
Yes, thank you. Remember, every apology is a step towards building trust and understanding. Until next time, take care and practice those apologies.
Goodbye, everyone.
Goodbye.